Okay, so I want to talk about the practical application of putting together a document with a bleed in Adobe Illustrator. So we're going to start from scratch. We've got Adobe Illustrator here. We're going to click on Create New. And in our new document window, as soon as it pops up here, in our new document window, we want to say what type of document it is. So we're going to do a print document. And then you've got some recently used sizes, and those sizes are all fine. But I want to push the point again that document size is not the same thing as page size. Remember, document size can be anything. Page size is simply the size of paper that the printer uses. So if you get in the habit of always kind of clicking on one of these and thinking that you're limited to that, you're really not. One of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to create an 8-inch by 8-inch document. So I'm going to switch to inches here, and I'm going to make it an 8-inch by 8-inch square document. And then where you may have not really processed things before, you'll notice that underneath that it says bleed. And we're going to put in a bleed amount here. For my classes, I like to use the 1/4 inch bleed amount. And the reason I like that is because the math is easier. It really helps you to understand the concept of bleed. And although in the industry it's probably an 1/8 or a 1/16 of an inch or sometimes even less, this is a much easier thing for students to wrap their heads around. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a 1/4 of an inch, 0.25. And it's all the way around. If it wasn't, I could click on this link to make sure that I have a 1/4 inch bleed all the way around. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Create. And what you will see, I'm going to call up some rulers here. What you will see is a document. The white part is the document that's 8 inches by 8 inches. And now we have a bleed line that goes 1/4 of an inch past the trim. Now, we also mentioned in our discussion about page geometry that there is a live area. And that live area is where critical things need to be kept so they don't get cut off in production. And for our class, again, I'm going to say that that's a 1/4 of an inch. You could put in a margin, that's a 1/4 of an inch when you do the document setup, but I like to drag right off of the ruler here to put my guides at a 1/4 of an inch. And this is my live area now. Okay, so I'm set up and I'm ready to go for a document that will bleed, meaning that if I have something I want it to print all the way to the edge, we actually have to go past it, and then they trim it down in production to actually make that document. So I'm going to do something very simple. I'm going to grab a rectangle here, and I'm going to make the background blue. So I'll select this. And you'll notice that when I dragged it out, I didn't drag it out to the white edge of the document. I dragged it all the way out to the bleed line. I'll even do a gradient here. Let's do that. We'll do a nice gradient. One end of the gradient, I'm going to do dark blue. And the other end of the gradient, we'll just do cyan. So I'll double click on this. We'll make sure we're using CMYK color, and I'll slide it to cyan. And so we've got from this sort of darker blue color at this end, we can make that even darker. Let's do that. Darker blue color at this end, and we'll go all the way to the just pure cyan on the other end. All right, and you see it goes sort of light to dark on this. If I want to change the direction, I can come in here and we can change the direction, of the gradient. I got to select the gradient tool here. We could change the direction of that to go from top to bottom. And I have a lighter color at the top and a darker color at the bottom. And we could adjust that gradient if we want to, but for the purposes of this demo, we're just going to leave it at that. Now, I'm going to add some type to this. So I'm going to take the type tool, I'm going to click here, and I'm going to type the word blue. And I'll select a font that I would like to work with on this item, the character palette over here. I can go and select the item that I want to. And I think maybe I'll pick Acumen Pro Bold, and I'll change the font here to make it larger. And maybe we'll make the color of the type white. So I'll come up here and change the character to a white text. Put some body type in here. It's a little too big, so I should probably change the size of that first. We'll set that to 14-point type. And I'll click and drag a new text box here. I do have one underneath there that I can get rid of. I'll leave that text black. That's okay with me. And now I'm going to address the live area here. So a lot of times in books, you'll notice that they have serial numbers or that sort of thing. I'm going to put a faux serial number here, 1001001. But good binary number there. And I need to keep that inside this area here. The reason we need to do that is accounting for production inaccuracies. It could get cut off if we moved it, any closer to the cut edge here. So just to kind of point things out to you, the way this is going to work is we've got this document that's trim size is the finished size, 8x8. We've got a bleed of 1/4 inch, meaning we drag it 1/4 of an inch beyond the edge of the page. And the last step is we need to make sure that we are printing it to a printer page that is in fact bigger than 8 1/4 by 8 1/4. So usually that has to be done on a PostScript printer. We have PostScript printers in all of our labs. I'm going to go ahead and go through the print process with you very, very quickly. So I'm going to click on print here. And I've got it set up to 8.5 by 11 or letter size page. You can see it's really close, right? That 8-inch page with 1/4 of an inch on each side goes right to the edge. So we might actually need to go to the next size up page that our printer has. At our labs, the next size above letter will be tabloid. And tabloid then is an 11 by 17. For my particular printer here. You can see now it's showing me how it's going to look on 11 by 17 sheet. And then we're going to go to marks and bleeds. So here's where we want to tell Illustrator to use the document bleed settings. We want to click here to have it map all the different printers' marks. And if you can see, it's putting little trim marks on this, little trim marks on there. So if we sent it to the 11 by 17 or tabloid size page, we'd see where we need to cut it out in production to make it look like it's printed all the way to the edge. Now, the thing you need to understand is in most production schemes, they don't print these one-off. Okay, they just don't print one page at a time. What they will likely do is gang several of these up, maybe 4 or 5 across, in a larger press sheet, and they'll print those out, and then when they're done, they'll put them in a drop blade hydraulic cutting press and cut these out based upon where these little cut marks are, and you will have finished production stuff. The waste paper, somebody always asks about that. When the paper is cut off, that waste paper is something called pre-consumer waste. So it is almost 100% recycled, goes back into the chain to be recycled to make more printing paper. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask, but that's the basics of putting together a bleed document.